Notre Dame is one of the biggest brands in all of college sports, and now the Irish are looking for a new apparel sponsor for the first time in nearly a decade. So, who's it going to be?
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome into Locked On Irish. It is Friday, May 12th, so happy Friday to each of you, and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, I appreciate you joining me here today. If you like what you hear, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, maybe even throw the video a like, rate the podcast 5 stars, whatever you're feeling on this fine Friday before you get your weekend rolling. My name is Wojciak, and I am the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer for college football talent at the Fox Sports headquarters in LA. And man, do we have a loaded show for you today. For the first time since 2014, Notre Dame is in the market for a new apparel deal. The current contract with Under Armour won't end until after next season, but the exclusive negotiating window between Notre Dame and Under Armour has expired, so let the bidding begin. Today, I'm going to go over what kind of impact this could have, not just for Notre Dame athletics, but really college sports as a whole, because I think this is going to have widespread ramifications that touches every corner of the college athletics landscape. Plus, I'll look at some of the factors to consider in Notre Dame's next deal and the potential suitors who are out there. But let's start by going back to January of 2014, when Notre Dame and Under Armour first agreed to their deal, so we can figure out how we got to this point today. If you remember, the decision to leave Adidas was a huge deal on its own. I mean, Notre Dame's deal with Adidas didn't end until later that June of that year, and Adidas went all in on their partnership with Notre Dame. They had been partners for 17 years up to that point in time, and Adidas, they were trying to be trendsetters with their apparel and some of their innovation, and I'll say this, some of it was good. Like, I like those tech fit uniforms they had, like during that 2012 season around that time. They were like super lightweight and basically like wearing dry fit shirts as jerseys. If you ever had to wear one of those tech fit jerseys over shoulder pads, you know what I'm talking about. It was like impossible to get those off. I only wore them like one time. They were testing them out on our football team. Fortunately, we ended up going Nike, but I tried them on and they were like skin tight. They were like tight T-shirts, so trying to put them over pads was a little bit weird, but it sort of set the precedent for the really lightweight jerseys that we see today. So I thought that was good. They tried some other stuff that was good. I like some of their cleats some years. Their shoes kind of go in and out of fashion, but I thought overall it's kind of a mixed bag. The only thing was the bad of the Adidas was really, really bad. They tried some things that didn't work. That Shamrock Series uniform against Miami in 2012, I hated that. But more than anything, I hated those neon basketball jerseys. Not only the ones that Notre Dame had to wear, but every single Adidas school had to wear too. When Louisville won the national championship in men's basketball in 2013, they had those weird Adidas like neon red uniforms. They were disgusting, and I always give my friends who are Louisville fans a hard time watching those highlights. It was like, man, it sucks that your one national championship that you won, you had to wear those garbage jerseys. But guess what? That championship got vacated, so I guess they don't have to worry about that anyway. But there were other things that sucked about the Adidas merch too, so I was very to see Notre Dame break away from that. But I would prefer that they switch over to Nike, but Under Armour was a lot cooler back then than it is now, and they also had a lot more money. So I think the context of the deal back then is important because Notre Dame never revealed the specifics of the deal with Under Armour, but ESPN reported that it was worth $90 million in cash and merchandise over a 10-year period, making it the most lucrative deal in the history of college athletics. But that milestone didn't last for too long because I think Michigan's deal with Jordan, they signed that like the following year, and that kind of blew Notre Dame's deal with Under Armour out of the water in terms of most lucrative. But still, it was unprecedented for its time, and the deal with Under Armour was so unique because it included an option for Notre Dame to take a portion of the cash component in Under Armour stock. That seemed like an especially good opportunity on the Notre Dame side because Under Armour was on the rise at that point. When Swarbrick was asked about the stock option, he said, quote, "It's an opportunity to reflect our belief that we can help build Under Armour and continue the rocket ride it's on, and Under Armour's belief that they can have a major impact on the University of Notre Dame," end quote. The rocket ride that it's on, those are strong words coming from Swarbrick. I don't remember that quote until I was researching this, and I saw that. I was like, wow, man. Under Armour, they must have thought really highly of him at the time, or maybe they just realized that they were going to pay him a ton of money. Either way, Notre Dame was the 13th Division I school to sign with Under Armour, but they were by far the number one priority, which was that's a big appeal to Notre Dame. As much as we love Notre Dame, and look, I love Notre Dame, you love Notre Dame, The school certainly has some hubris, okay? And that was evident with this deal. The idea of going to Nike and becoming just another school, I guess, among many, wasn't as appealing to Notre Dame at the time. They wanted to be the top priority. They wanted to be pretty much the main school because 13 Division I schools for a top brand, that's really not that much. Certainly not compared to Nike or Adidas at the time. But Notre Dame likes to be different. They like to be able to do their own thing. And some of that I like. I love the fact that Notre Dame is still independent. But in this case, I kind of rolled my eyes because I wanted Notre Dame to go to Nike. That was a selfish thing. But I still understood the move to Under Armour because of the money that was involved. And the timing of that deal was also very important because it was right around the time that college football was moving away from the BCS to the college football playoff system that they're currently in today before the expanded system, obviously. And it also came on the heels of the first major wave of conference realignment that shook up all of college athletics, and that is what led to Notre Dame's move from the Big East to the ACC. So you got so much going on, so much more money being thrown around from all different directions. Schools who weren't normally getting a ton of money, now they're getting it a ton. So Notre Dame's like, wait a second. We need to up the price here. And Notre Dame needed to make a big splash like this through apparel because they weren't getting the type of money that teams in the Big Ten or the SEC were getting from these new television contracts. And that was a first for Notre Dame. Like, they've always had money. They always will have money. That's not going to change. But now all of a sudden there was a little bit more competition looking around the college athletics landscape. But just a few years after that deal was agreed upon, Under Armour started to fall off in a big way. Their sales were down, their stock prices were down, and they had to initiate serious cost-cutting measures that included ending sponsorships with other schools including UCLA, Cal, and Hawaii. And then Cincinnati and Boston College, they both bounced for Adidas and New Balance, respectively. So they were forced to either reconstructure or cancel partnerships altogether with some of their top athletes and leagues, including the NFL. And you might have guessed this, but it's not the best idea to cross the NFL or anyone involved with the NFL. And the breakup with UCLA was especially costly. So much so that Under Armour was ordered to pay UCLA $67 million for breaking the deal early. And the whole ordeal was such a massive blow to the entire UCLA athletic department. They're actually still feeling some of those ramifications today despite the settlement because of all the ongoing process and all that involved in basically a long period of time where they weren't getting the money that they were expected to get. It was really bad for UCLA. And as a matter of fact, that sort of broken deal actually played a major role in why UCLA wanted to join the Big Ten. Now, obviously, UCLA has a new partner in Jordan, so they're getting money today, but to sort of recoup all of that money, they needed to join the Big Ten and make some of that back. So that was at least a part of the reason why they decided to move along with USC. So all of this led to a bad reputation for the business, and it wasn't like Under Armour gear was killing it in the culture either. I mean, sure, they got Steph Curry, they had Tom Brady, they had Cam Newton, so they had some big athletes, but no one was rushing to the stores to get the newest Under Armour gear, and they certainly weren't going to the stores to buy the new Steph Curry signature shoe. That was their main guy. Actually, the Steph Curry shoe, it became like a meme for a while because they were so ugly. Now, I think they've improved a little bit since, but you get my point here. And if you look at Under Armour's finances today, surprisingly, they reported that their revenue in 2023, in the 2023 fiscal year rather, is actually up 3%, but their stock price has fallen from $27 in 2019 to $7.71 today, as Ross Dellinger points out in his article. So, when you consider Under Armour's decline, both financially and culturally, and take into account the changing landscape that's going on during this iteration of conference realignment, I think it's the perfect time for Notre Dame to look elsewhere and find a new partner. And make no mistake about it, Notre Dame is one of, if not the most valuable individual brand in all of college sports. The fan base spreads all across the country and even across the globe. And another thing about Notre Dame fans, especially alums, boy, do we love wearing it on our clothes. And look at me, I'm doing it right now. I'm guilty of it at this moment. Has anyone ever walked down a street in Chicago and not seen at least one person wearing a Notre Dame polo or a quarter zip? If you have, scientists would tell you that's more rare than a hybrid eclipse. It's not just the alumni either. The Subway alums are a huge component in this as well. So a guy named Tony Altimore at Altimore Collins & Company conducted a study just last year in 2022 that ranked the top 16 largest fan bases in all of college football. It's an interesting study how he did it all. But he found that Notre Dame came in second just behind Ohio State. And if you want to branch that out, just beyond college athletics and look at all of sports and looking at pure brand appeal and everything that goes along with that, including fan base, merchandise, tickets, revenue across away games, things like that, all that kind of culminates into one. I mean, how many teams can you count that are 100% bigger than Notre Dame? Cowboys for sure, Yankees for sure, Lakers, Steelers, probably the Packers, maybe the Warriors. I don't know if that's going to last, though. Really, though, Notre Dame isn't that far off. They're certainly closer to those teams than they are away from them. So you take all of this into consideration, the decline of Under Armour, the seismic shifts going on in college athletics, and the global appeal of Notre Dame's brand. I believe this is a perfect time for the university to sign another groundbreaking deal with one of the top brands in the world. So, which logo might we see on the Notre Dame uniforms after next season? That's coming up next. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices but don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. What makes Built so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. These bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy. Each bar only has 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait to get a box. You can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, and you can still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. So, head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a 4-bar box of Built Bars. And if you're close to Sam's Club, run and grab a 13-bar box with some of our hit flavors. No matter how you get your supply of Built Bars, you're in for a delicious treat, and you can thank me later. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. Let's look at a few factors here to consider in Notre Dame's next deal. And the first one is obvious, okay? It's money. Who has enough money to pay Notre Dame more than the $9 million in annual value that they currently receive from Under Armour? According to Ross Sellinger, of the other 9 teams that rank the top 10 nationally among the most lucrative apparel deals, here's how it breaks down. So Nike has 2 teams technically that are true Nike schools, Texas and Ohio State. And then there's Michigan, who is a Jordan school but sort of falls under the Nike umbrella. Adidas surprisingly has 4 teams, Kansas, Louisville, Washington, and Nebraska. And then Under Armour has 2 teams outside of Notre Dame, obviously, Auburn and Wisconsin. So odds are Notre Dame is going to stick with one of those 3, and since they're leaving Under Armour, Nike and Adidas still seem like the most realistic options, although I wouldn't totally rule out Under Armour. I wouldn't say it's likely, but I wouldn't totally rule them out either. Now, Notre Dame has made it clear that they won't make decisions purely based on what makes them the most money. If that was the case, they would have joined the Big Ten years ago. I think that's the most common misconception about Notre Dame. I just had to deal with it recently, dealing with people who think that the only reason that Notre Dame doesn't join a conference is because of money and that they're just greedy. Like, you're listening to this podcast, you're smart, you know that Notre Dame could be making more money if they just join the Big Ten, because the teams in the Big Ten and the teams in the SEC, they make more money per year off their share of the television contract than Notre Dame does with NBC. Now, Notre Dame's going to make a new deal with NBC. They're going to agree on a new one here in probably the next year or so. I'd say it's got to be happening soon. So that's going to change things to an extent. But even then, I feel like Notre Dame is still probably going to be a little bit behind if we're looking just at the television revenue, and that I think plays a part in this as well. So I think Notre Dame is obviously going to want quite a big paycheck from whoever it is that they make their next deal with, but there's going to have to be a little bit more incentives, like maybe the stock options that they had with Under Armour, but I think it might go a little bit beyond that. So let's look at a few of the potential options here, go over some of the pros and cons, and let's start with Nike, because Nike is the top dog in the athletic apparel industry. I don't really think that's debatable. Nike really has been the top dog ever since Michael Jordan and his mom decided that is who they wanted to represent MJ. That was a true rocket ship. I know Swarbrick called Under Armour a rocket ship when they signed that deal. That didn't necessarily pan out how he expected it to, but Nike has just been on this wave, and they have been ever since then. And they bring a level of marketing power and financial resources to the table that nobody else can match, really. Like, Adidas can. They could probably come the closest out of any, but I think Nike's just at a different level because they've been at the top for so long. And look, it's just the coolest brand out there, at least for people my age and people younger than me and the recruits who matter the most, really, in all of this. Like, Nike is the top brand. Now, people might have their individual preferences, which I totally understand. Like, I personally enjoy Nike, but I can understand if someone, they like the Adidas stuff a little bit more. That's cool. I get that. But if we're looking at just what's the coolest brand nationally, globally, it's Nike, and it's not really a question. And other brands have had waves of popularity, but Nike has stayed in constant control at the top, and they've really shown no signs of stopping. Part of that has to do with the fact that they got Kobe Bryant, and then after Kobe, they had LeBron. And then they had Kevin Durant, like the biggest superstars in all of sports, really. Most of them are Nike guys. So I want Nike because Nike is cool, and Notre Dame isn't typically known for being cool to the youth. So let's be honest here. Like, we all love Notre Dame, but it's not necessarily. The cool factor has improved dramatically ever since Marcus Freeman came around, because he's an objectively very cool dude. Like, he just looks like he was in GQ, Actually, I was going to say he looks like he's a GQ guy, but he actually was on the cover of GQ, so I think that tells you all you need to know. I have no resources here. I have no sources that tell me this, but I bet if you ask Marcus Freeman behind closed doors, what would you rather be wearing? I bet he'd say Nike, although he does love his white Vans, so maybe he might say we want to be a Vans school, although I would say Vans not on the top of the betting charts there as for Notre Dame's next sponsor. But I think Nike could help out in recruiting because again, it's just more appealing to 17-year-olds. And I'm not saying that a kid is going to go to Notre Dame over another school because they're a Nike brand. That's not what I'm saying. But it helps with the reputation, and I think kids do make decisions based off reputation, whether it's right or wrong. You can judge that freely, but I'm just saying it does play a factor. It's not the only factor, but it does play a factor. All right, let's look at Jordan, which is still under the Nike umbrella. And I think Jordan is cool. I was actually just at the Oklahoma football facilities a couple weeks ago with Fox. They have an unbelievable facility, and they just signed a deal with Jordan not that long ago, and it's very cool. I mean, the logo is prominent, but the gear is really cool, and I didn't think it was like distracting or like too in your face or anything, but it was different, and I thought it was cool, and I think that Jordan could be a good opportunity for Notre Dame because it still falls into that Nike umbrella, but I just don't see a world where the higher-ups at Notre Dame sign off on putting one individual, like a person, as the logo that represents the entire athletic department. I don't think that's going to be the case. Like, I already talked about the hubris of Notre Dame not wanting to go to Nike. I really don't think they're going to go to Jordan. I think that they probably been more open to the idea of going Nike now, but Jordan, I would be floored, okay? That's just not how they operate, and that's unfortunate. I think it's cool, but I don't think it's an option. So let's move on to Adidas. They're the second biggest player in the athletic apparel industry today, and they've been expanding their college sports partnerships in recent years. I've mentioned before they have a good rep for innovative designs and technology when they don't push it too far like they did with those jerseys. And obviously, there's a shared history there that I talked about in segment 1. I am sure that Adidas would love to get Notre Dame back in the fold. And I feel much better about re-signing with Adidas today than I did about re-upping the deal way back in 2014 because I just didn't like the vibes at that point, and I didn't like what Adidas had been putting out. And that's kind of how I feel with Under Armour today. I think it's just time for a change, and Adidas has changed since that time. So I could see Notre Dame going back to them, but we'll see. And then I've seen a couple other outliers, let's call them, okay? A couple different options that I didn't even really consider, including Lululemon, Rhoback, and others. And look, I love wearing Lululemon clothes. I'm actually wearing Lululemon sweatpants right now. I like Rhoback a lot, and I like these other like athleisure brand. But am I missing something? Like, these brands don't make any athletic equipment, not football cleats for sure, or anything of the sort. So I guess would they partner up with like another top brand who actually makes the equipment to make uniforms, cleats, gloves, things like that? Or would they pay someone else? Like, that's the thing that I don't get. Now, from a merchandise standpoint, that'd be awesome. If Notre Dame had a Lululemon merchandise, or if Notre Dame had Lululemon merchandise and that's all they had, and then like all the equipment was Nike or Adidas, like, I don't care. I would buy a ridiculous amount of Lululemon Notre Dame collaboration merchandise, but I don't really see how that benefits the brand. I mean, obviously, in this case, it would benefit Lululemon, but like if, say, they did it with like Lululemon merchandise and then Adidas gear, why would Adidas want to do that? Why would Adidas be willing to share that profit and share Notre Dame? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I guess if they were just willing to throw like insane sums of money, Lululemon, I'm saying, just to be involved in this space, maybe that could change my mind. But I heard that and I didn't really see it, but I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. If I am, let me know. Now, could Notre Dame go back to Under Armour? I talked about this already. I just don't see it happening for all the reasons I mentioned. The stock, the reputation, and I can't speak for the relationship with the school, but I feel like if Under Armour wanted to present like a Godfather offer to Notre Dame to keep them around, they would have done it in the exclusive window, wouldn't they have? Like, that was the prime time to do it, and clearly they weren't able to come to an agreement. So I think that's probably out the door right now. Now, that could change if Under Armour looks at their whiteboard and they realize how dire things could be if they manage to lose Notre Dame. Maybe then they come in and they're like, wait, we have another offer for you that they didn't present during the exclusive window. But right now, I don't really see that happening. So I think you guys can all tell. I want Nike. I think Nike is the top brand in apparel and Notre Dame is the top brand in college sports. So they're perfect together. And I understand Nike has a bunch of different schools, but their partnership with Notre Dame would be such a big deal. They might not be the only priority. Nike's got a few more things going on than Under Armour, I will say that, but it would still be a massive deal for Notre Dame and Nike to collab. I think the merchandise would be awesome. All the people who are sort of naysayers to joining that right now, just wait till you see that first line of merchandise. I think you'd come around. Because look at all the cool stuff that Under Armour has made for Marcus Freeman that we see him wearing in pictures and stuff all the time. And guess what? That never sees the light of day. Like, we can't buy it at bookstores. It's ridiculous. We're left with like a very limited option of polos and quarter zips every year, which of course that I buy. But still, like, I feel like Nike wouldn't gatekeep us from wearing our own merchandise of the team that we want to root for. That's not their MO. And I don't think that's going to be the case with Adidas either if that's the route that Notre Dame chooses to go. So this is biased. I admit I love Nike gear, but I think this is the best move for the student athletes, the university, because Nike has a ton of money, and I'm sure they're going to be willing to spend it. But most importantly, we the fans will look awesome in our Notre Dame and Nike gear. Okay, what kind of impact could this have on Notre Dame athletics and beyond? That's coming up next. So obviously we as Notre Dame fans have an invested interest in how Notre Dame's next deal goes down, but I think it goes way beyond that. I think the entire industry is going to be paying close attention to see how this plays out for a variety of different reasons. This is going to be the first major apparel deal done with one of the top brands in all of sports during the NIL era. And as Andy Staples from The Athletic points out in his article from Thursday, he thinks that NIL could play a massive role in this negotiation, and I totally agree. Andy Staples presents the idea of creating a different arrangement where Notre Dame would basically create a partnership for all of their uniforms to be one brand, but then allow its athletes to make their own shoe deals, which is similar to what NBA and NFL players get to do. This could be used as a recruiting tool, and I just don't know how many different guys, how many high school football players are going to be good enough or have that kind of attention that they could generate like a lucrative shoe deal, but I could be wrong. Now, if this were like Skylar Diggins in her peak when she was at Notre Dame, that's a different story. She could have generated a massive shoe deal from any of the top brands. They would have been falling over to get Skylar Diggins a shoe deal while she was at Notre Dame. But I do think there's a world where Notre Dame could arrange a partnership like this where it's like you have your logo on the uniforms, you have like all the merchandise and all this, but they could create some incentives for the student athletes. They give them a little bit of freedom, give them a little bit of wiggle room, because as we know, Jack Swarbrick loves the true sense of NIL, in which it's athletes get to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. This would be a great opportunity to do that rather than just like strictly pay for play. Because there probably is a world where Notre Dame could just create an agreement with any of these brands and then carve out a certain amount for all of their athletes. But I don't think Jack Swarbrick and the university would really buy into that. But I don't know, maybe they could arrange something so that it's not just pay for play, but they create an arrangement that benefits the student athletes and creates a little bit more freedom than any other deal has at this point in time. So if Notre Dame does choose to go with like a Lululemon or some other brand that I was just talking about, like going away from the traditional sports brands, that could create a very interesting domino effect. And this really only happens, in my opinion, if the big dogs like Nike and Adidas sort of don't shell out the kind of money that Notre Dame would be expecting. And now, in Staples' article, he explains that Nike and Adidas are not expected to bid as aggressively in this next round of apparel deals because the last round was so aggressive. And honestly, Under Armour was a big reason why and all of that, because they came in, they were throwing big money around. Honestly, more money that they could probably back up. And I think that's actually what happened with the whole UCLA ordeal. I think Under Armour promised them a little bit too much money. And then when everything started going south for them, they had to pull out, and that ended up being pretty catastrophic for the company. But even if Adidas and Nike were playing it a little bit more conservatively, like this is Notre Dame. The fact that Notre Dame enters the discussion here, it changes everything. And I'm sure Adidas would love to have Notre Dame on the books. And I've said I think Nike and Notre Dame are meant to be. But whatever Notre Dame decides to do, the partner or partners that they choose will represent them during one of the most crucial times in the history of the Notre Dame athletic department. That alone is extremely important. That alone, I think, is really appealing to these top brands. It's like, not only are you getting Notre Dame, you're getting Notre Dame at an absolutely crucial time for all of the sports teams and the university at large. And with NIL in full swing and the expanded playoff just a couple years away, the sport is in a period of constant evolution, and we're entering a brand new era of Notre Dame football and Notre Dame sports. And I think that all of these top brands are going to want to be affiliated with that. And Notre Dame is going to have plenty of suitors here. I think they're going to be smart, and they have plenty of time. I don't think this deal is going to get done anytime soon, but just the fact that Notre Dame is even entering the open market is exciting, because I think my opinions are clear on Under Armour. I've complained about them before. I think it's time, and I feel like this is such an exciting time for Notre Dame, and I think it's going to be really cool to see how this plays out. And I have faith in Jack Swarbrick. I have faith in the athletic department and the university officials to do something that we want. And I think that moving away from Under Armour is a good sign of that happening. When they moved away from Adidas, that was a good sign back then too. And again, this is just a new era of Notre Dame. Champion is long gone. They're not rocking Champion anymore. There's a Jumbotron in Notre Dame Stadium. The players don't play on grass anymore. They play on turf. And guess what? The world's kept spinning, okay? So this isn't your great-grandpa's Notre Dame anymore. So let's not treat the apparel like it either. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of Locked On Irish. Thanks again for making this your first listen of the day. On the way out, remember to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts if you haven't already, and give us a follow on all the social media channels, which you can find on Twitter at Locked On Irish, on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod, and my personal Twitter account at Tyler Wojciak. That's at Tyler, Wojciak. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and I will see you on Monday.